5 minutes after my family told my 7-year-old daughter and me to leave Christmas dinner, my mother was standing barefoot on the front porch in the cold, begging me not to tear the third envelope. She was still holding a torn corner of the first one in her hand, her pearl bracelet sliding down her wrist, her face pale in the porch light like she had just realized the person she had thrown out was the only person standing between her and losing the house. My sister Eliza stood behind her in her velvet holiday dress, trying to press 2 pieces of paper together with shaking fingers, her perfect curls falling loose around her face, her mouth opening and closing without producing anything except panic. My father, who had spent the entire dinner staring at his plate while they humiliated me and my child, was suddenly saying my name like it had weight. Rachel. Wait. Just wait. We can talk about this. 5 minutes earlier, none of them had wanted to talk. 5 minutes earlier, my mother had dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin and said Christmas was easier when I was not there. 5 minutes earlier, Eliza had leaned back in the chair she had claimed years ago like it was a throne and told me that maybe this year I should take Mia and leave before dessert, and maybe I should not come back until I was, in a healthier place. My daughter Mia had been sitting beside me in her red Christmas dress with the white collar, both hands folded around her fork, trying so hard not to move that she looked less like a child and more like a guest who knew she could be removed from the table if she breathed wrong. There was still gravy cooling on my plate. Mia had taken one bite of her roll because I had whispered that she needed something in her stomach before we drove home. I remember the smell of cinnamon candles and roasted turkey, the sound of Eliza's children laughing too loudly at the other end of the table, the way my mother never corrected them but had twice told Mia to sit still, and the way my father looked down when I looked at him for help. That silence mattered more than all the words. I had heard ugly sentences from my sister before. I had survived my mother's soft little cuts for 46 years. But my father's silence while my daughter watched the room decide we did not belong did something inside me that grief had not been able to do. It ended my training. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Something just stopped reaching. I turned to Mia and said, gently, "Honey, go get your coat and your backpack. We're leaving." She slid out of the chair without hesitation, and the speed of it made me feel sick, because that meant some part of her had been waiting for permission to escape a room that had already taught her she was unwanted. The second she disappeared into the hallway, Eliza gave a small laugh through her nose and said, "Finally. Maybe we can have one peaceful holiday." My mother's mouth tightened, not because Eliza had gone too far, but because she was afraid I might make the moment uncomfortable. Connor, Eliza's husband, lifted his wine glass and said, "Boundaries are healthy," in the smug voice of a man who had learned therapy words only so he could use them as locks. I stood, pushed my chair back slowly, and walked into the kitchen. They thought I was going to cry beside the sink. They thought I was going to return with an apology, the way I always had, because useful daughters are trained to apologize even when they are bleeding. Instead, I opened the upper cabinet near the holiday platters, reached behind the silver tray my mother only used when she wanted guests to believe we were warmer than we were, and pulled out 3 cream-colored envelopes from the law office of Marlene Hayes. Each one had a name written across the front in my handwriting. Mom and Dad. Eliza. Family Emergency Trust Draft. They were thick because they were not Christmas cards. They were copies of attorney-prepared instructions tied to my late husband's wrongful death settlement, the money I had been preparing to use to pay off my parents' mortgage arrears, clear my sister's business debts, and create a small emergency fund for the same family that had just thrown my daughter into the cold. I placed the first envelope on the counter. "You're right," I said. "Christmas will be easier without me." Then I tore it straight down the middle. My mother flinched before she understood why. I tore the second envelope, the one marked Eliza, and dropped the pieces beside the first. Eliza stood so fast her chair scraped the hardwood. "What are you doing?" I picked up the third envelope. My father finally rose from his seat. "Rachel," he said, in the warning tone he had used since I was 16, the tone that meant I was about to embarrass the family by having boundaries. I looked at all of them, my mother's staged helplessness, Eliza's outrage, Connor's calculation, my father's authority arriving too late and for the wrong reason. "Then you won't mind me doing this?" I tore the third envelope halfway before my mother lunged for the counter and grabbed a piece of the first one. Her eyes moved over the attorney letterhead, the mortgage payoff line, the delinquent tax cure amount, and her hands started shaking. Eliza snatched another torn piece, pressed it against the one beside it, and the color drained out of her face. Connor said, "What the hell is that?" as if the paper itself had betrayed him. My father reached for the pieces with both hands. Nobody laughed then. Nobody called me dramatic. They were too busy trying to put together the instructions they had not known were their last chance. By the time Mia came back wearing her coat, her little backpack hanging from both shoulders, the whole room had changed. 5 minutes earlier, I had been a burden. Now I was a signature. 5 minutes earlier, they wanted us gone. Now my mother was whispering, "Rachel, please," as though she had not just told my child and me that the holiday was better without us. I took Mia's hand, walked past them, and opened the front door. Cold air hit my face, sharp and clean. Behind me, my sister screamed, "Wait, wait, wait," and my father said, "Don't you dare drive away before we talk." I buckled Mia into the car while my mother ran down the porch steps barefoot, still clutching the torn paper. "Rachel, don't do this to us." I looked at her once through the open car door. For the first time in my life, I did not explain that I was not doing anything to them. I was only finally stopping what I had been doing for them. I got behind the wheel, started the engine, and drove away while my daughter stared silently out the side window, one small hand wrapped around the strap of her backpack. To understand why I brought those envelopes to Christmas dinner at all, you have to understand the kind of daughter I had been trained to be. I was not the loved one in my family. I was the useful one. There is a difference, and if you have ever been useful in the wrong family, you know exactly what I mean. Useful daughters get praised only when they are carrying something, paying something, fixing something, smoothing something over, or shrinking themselves enough to make everyone else comfortable. My sister Eliza was 6 years older than me, which meant she had already been crowned before I was born. My mother Linda called her my miracle girl, even when Eliza was 29 and crying because a florist would not refund a non-refundable deposit. My father Frank called her sensitive, which meant anything she did could be excused as emotion, while anything I felt was called attitude. Eliza got dance lessons, birthday parties at skating rinks, new dresses for school pictures, and a used car my father described as necessary for her confidence. I got practical gifts, after-school jobs, and sentences like, "Rachel can handle it," or "Rachel has always been independent." Independence sounds like praise until you realize it was never offered as a choice. It was the word they used when they wanted to deny me help and admire themselves for raising someone who survived without it. Holidays showed the truth best. Eliza's gifts were wrapped in shiny paper with ribbon. Mine were wrapped in whatever roll was left over from the year before. She opened jewelry, clothes, perfume, gift cards, things my mother had thought about for weeks. I opened socks, pajamas, one cookbook when I was 14 because my mother said I should start learning how to feed myself properly. Then someone handed me a trash bag so I could collect everyone else's wrapping paper. I did not know that was wrong for a long time. Children do not name a system when they are born inside it. They learn where to stand. They learn which needs are too expensive to mention. They learn which chair belongs to them and which chair is only available if someone else does not want it. By 16, I was working weekends at a grocery store and paying for my own school shoes because Dad said money was tight. That same month, he co-signed Eliza's first boutique credit card because she said she needed to build a personal brand. When I brought home my first paycheck, my mother smiled and said, "Isn't it nice to finally contribute?" I was proud for about 10 seconds before I realized contribute meant there would be no going back. From then on, if a bill became awkward, if groceries ran short, if Eliza needed gas, if my parents had property taxes due, somehow my name entered the conversation. Nobody demanded at first. They hinted. My mother sighed at the kitchen table and rubbed her temples. My father muttered about how nobody understood what it took to keep a roof over everyone's head. Eliza cried about how she was trying so hard and nobody believed in her. I learned to offer before the ask arrived because offering felt less humiliating than being cornered. That pattern followed me into adulthood. When I met Daniel Mercer, I did not know what to do with a man who did kind things without making me pay for them emotionally. Daniel worked as a construction safety inspector and later a union site safety supervisor. He noticed everything: cracked steps, loose railings, blocked exits, tired workers, cheap temporary fixes that were not really fixes. He believed small warnings mattered because people got hurt when warnings were treated as inconvenience. Maybe that was why he saw my family clearly so fast. On our third Thanksgiving together, after my mother spent 20 minutes praising Eliza's boutique ideas and then asked me in the same breath whether Daniel and I could temporarily help with a late utility bill, he drove home in silence for 10 minutes before saying, "Rachel, they don't ask because you have more. They ask because you say yes." I defended them because that is what useful daughters do. I said family was complicated. I said Eliza had always needed more help. I said my parents did the best they could. Daniel kept both hands on the wheel and said, "Needing more support is not the same as deserving yours forever." I did not know how to live inside that sentence. It felt too clean, too dangerous, too much like a door I was not ready to open. Even after we married, even after Mia was born, I kept paying. Not huge amounts all at once, not enough to look shocking if you saw one transfer in isolation, but enough to matter. $200 when my parents were short on utilities. $300 toward property taxes. A direct payment to Eliza's vendor when her boutique was one invoice away from turning the corner. A check for my parents' insurance premium because Mom said Dad was under stress. Daniel never forbade it, but one evening, after I sent money to Eliza without telling him because I already knew what he would say, he slid a notebook across the kitchen table and asked me to write it down. "Not to shame you," he said. "To make the fog visible." The fog had numbers. Over the years, Daniel and I sent my parents more than $18,000 in small transfers and covered more than $7,000 connected to Eliza's boutique and personal debts. My family never called it help. They called it family. They called it temporary. They called it Rachel being Rachel. And because Daniel loved me, he did not force me to choose before I was ready. He only asked one question whenever another request came in. "Would you want Mia to think this is love?" I always said no. Then, for years, I sent the money anyway. Daniel died on a Tuesday morning that started so ordinary it still feels offensive. He left before sunrise with coffee in his travel mug and a granola bar in his jacket because he had forgotten breakfast again. Mia was 6 then, sitting half asleep at the kitchen table and drawing a crooked sun on the back of a school flyer. Daniel kissed the top of her head and told her he expected a full report on whether the cafeteria pizza had improved. She said, without looking up, "It never improves, Daddy." He laughed, kissed me by the sink, and said he would pick up milk on the way home. That was the last normal sentence I ever got from my husband. The call came at 10:37. I know the exact minute because time broke there and left a mark. A scaffold platform had collapsed during a site inspection downtown. At first they said fall. Then serious. Then hospital. Nobody said dead until I arrived and saw the chaplain standing beside the emergency room doors. People describe grief like a wave, but mine was not water. It was a building losing every support beam at once. I remember sitting in a plastic chair with Daniel's work boots on the floor beside me because someone from the site had brought his belongings in a clear bag. I remember thinking the boots looked embarrassed to be empty. The company's first statement called it a tragic accident. That phrase followed me for weeks. Tragic accident sounded like weather, like lightning, like something no human hand could have prevented. But Daniel had left notes. Daniel always left notes. He had documented missing guardrails, an overloaded platform, temporary repairs that should never have passed inspection, and a supervisor who kept pushing walkthroughs forward because delays cost money. 3 workers had complained before Daniel ever stepped onto that platform. I learned all of that later through Marlene Hayes, the attorney Daniel's union representative recommended after the funeral. At the funeral, my family behaved exactly well enough for other people to admire them. My mother wore black and received sympathy like she was the widow. My father stood near the back of the church shaking hands and telling people Daniel had been a fine provider, as if my husband's highest purpose had been utility. Eliza cried beautifully and posted a photograph of herself holding Mia with a caption about holding family close in difficult times. Mia had not wanted to be held by Eliza. She wanted Daniel. So did I. After the funeral came the months people do not put in movies because there is nothing poetic about calling insurance companies while your daughter asks why daddy's lunch cooler is still in the garage. Bills arrived. Groceries cost the same. The mortgage did not lower its voice because I was grieving. Daniel had life insurance, but there were delays, forms, employer paperwork, beneficiary verification, and all the little administrative cruelties that make loss feel like standing in line while bleeding. The wrongful death claim moved even slower. Marlene warned me it would. They will say it is complex, she told me in her office, a small brick building with old wood floors and a coffee machine that made terrible coffee. Complex usually means they hope grief exhausts you before liability does. I liked her immediately. She was in her 60s, silver hair cut to her jaw, no-nonsense glasses, the kind of woman who put documents in order before she put people in their place. She taught me the language of what had happened to Daniel: ignored safety complaints, preventable hazard, documented negligence, delayed corrective action. Those words did not bring him back, but they kept the company from reducing him to unfortunate weather. During those months, I stopped helping my parents because there was nothing left to help them with. I did not make an announcement. I simply stopped sending the little transfers. My mother noticed in 23 days. Not once in those 23 days did she ask if Mia was sleeping, if I had eaten, if I needed someone to sit with me while I sorted Daniel's clothes. But she called on the 23rd day and said, carefully, "Honey, your father was checking the account." Did something happen with the March transfer? Something had happened. My husband had died. But I knew that was not what she meant. I said, "I can't send money right now, Mom." She paused just long enough to make the silence feel like a bill. "Of course. I just wish you'd warned us. Your father planned around it." A few weeks later, when Mia got strep and I missed work and the car needed a repair I could not postpone, I had to call my mother for help. I hated myself while dialing. She brought 2 bags of groceries and a check for $400. She looked around my kitchen like poverty might be contagious and said, "We all have to pull together." I thanked her because I needed the groceries. That night she posted on Facebook about the importance of caring for widows and children in the family, with a photo of the grocery bags on my counter cropped so nobody could see the peeling paint behind them. 32 people commented that she was an angel. I did not correct them. Useful daughters learn early that correcting the family story costs more than letting people misunderstand you. The settlement took 9 months. 9 months of depositions, mediation, safety reports, company lawyers using polite voices to imply Daniel should have noticed what his own notes proved he had warned them about. 9 months of Mia asking if Daddy's company was sorry and me saying, they should be, because I could not say yes. In October, Marlene called me into her office and slid a final agreement across the desk. The number at the bottom did not look real. It was not lottery money. It was not billionaire money. It was not the kind of money that puts your name on buildings or makes strangers call you lucky. But it was more money than Daniel and I had ever had at once, enough to pay off our mortgage, enough to fund Mia's college, enough to make the future feel less like a hallway with no lights. After attorney fees, medical bills, and the liens that always appear when money finally does, the controlled account held just over $1.18 million. I stared at the figure until the digits blurred. Marlene watched me without pushing. "I want you to understand something," she said. "This money is not a blessing. It is a measure of damage. Do not let anyone convince you that receiving it means you owe them access to it." I nodded like I understood. I did not fully. Grief money carries a strange guilt. You cannot celebrate it, but you are terrified of wasting it. You cannot call it good fortune because it came through a door your husband did not walk back through. For several weeks, I did nothing except sign what had to be signed and move the funds exactly where Marlene and the financial planner told me to move them. I paid off my own mortgage. I paid Daniel's remaining medical bills. I set up a college fund for Mia and a trust no one could touch without legal oversight. I bought a used Subaru with working heat because the old car coughed every time I turned the key. I did not tell my family. I told myself it was because I wanted privacy. The truth was uglier. I knew the moment they heard the word settlement, Daniel's death would become a resource. They would not say it that way. They would wrap it in family language, emergency language, Daniel would have wanted language. But underneath, they would see a number. In late November, my father called from a parking lot. I could hear wind and traffic behind him. He tried to sound casual, which meant he wanted something. "Your mother and I may have to refinance the house," he said. "Just a timing issue." Timing issue was Frank Mercer language for trouble he did not want named. 2 days later, Eliza called crying because the boutique's landlord was being predatory, which turned out to mean she was 4 months behind on rent. Connor, her husband, had apparently been moving some funds around, a phrase that made Daniel's old voice rise in my memory like a warning light. By the first week of December, I knew more than they realized because my mother accidentally forwarded me an email chain while trying to send me a recipe. In the chain were phrases like delinquent property taxes, missed mortgage payments, default notice, business line of credit, personal guarantee. My parents' house, the house where I had spent childhood learning which daughter mattered, was not secure. Eliza's boutique was not thriving. Connor's smooth talk had been covering holes with borrowed money, and at least one of those holes had my parents' names near it. I should have felt anger first. Instead, I felt the old reflex. Help. Fix. Become useful before anyone asks. I told myself this was different because Daniel's money could create peace. I told myself I could honor him by making sure nobody in my family lost their home. I told myself that if I helped in a structured way, with lawyers and boundaries, maybe it would not become the same old bleeding. Marlene was skeptical from the first sentence. "You want to give how much to the same people who posted grocery bags after your husband died?" she asked, folding her hands on her desk. I looked away. "They're still my parents." "That is a relationship," she said. "Not a financial plan." But she did what attorneys do when clients insist on being human. She built guardrails. No direct cash. No blank checks. No money to Connor. No money to Eliza personally. If I chose to help, the funds would go through formal instructions, a mortgage payoff authorization directly to the lender, a property tax cure directly to the county, a negotiated debt settlement directly to approved creditors, and a small family emergency trust draft that would require my final signature, trustee oversight, and clear conditions. "And Rachel," Marlene said, tapping the stack once with her pen, "nothing is final until you sign after Christmas. These are copies for family discussion. They are not release orders. Do you hear me?" I heard her. I also heard my mother's voice from years of holiday tables, family pulls together. I had the envelopes prepared anyway. I thought if I could walk into Christmas dinner not as the widow they pitied, not as the useful daughter they drained, but as the person who could save everyone without asking for applause, maybe something would shift. Maybe my father would look at me with relief instead of obligation. Maybe my mother would see Mia as a granddaughter, not an awkward reminder of grief. Maybe Eliza would, for once, understand that I had been loving them at a cost. That hope embarrasses me now. But on Christmas morning, when I packed the envelopes into my bag and helped Mia button her red dress, I was not thinking like a woman with a lawyer. I was thinking like a little girl still trying to earn a chair at her mother's table. The warning signs started before we even got to Christmas dinner, but I was still committed to misreading them as invitations. A week before Christmas, my mother called to ask what Mia wanted and somehow turned a conversation about art supplies into a careful question about whether everything with Daniel's case had finally settled down. She did not ask whether I was okay after the mediation. She did not ask whether hearing lawyers assign a dollar figure to my husband's death had done something to me. She said settle down like she was asking whether a storm had passed and left useful things in the yard. When I gave a non-committal answer, she sighed and said, well, if you are more comfortable now, I hope you remember family has been carrying worry, too. 2 days later, Eliza called from the boutique after closing. I could hear boxes being moved in the background, the hollow sound of a business already emptying itself. She began by asking if Mia still liked glitter markers, then drifted into a speech about how hard it was for small business owners, how landlords had no heart, how mom and dad were aging faster because of stress, how it was almost unfair that some people got a financial reset only because tragedy forced everyone to pay attention. I almost asked her if she could hear herself. I did not. The next day, Connor texted me a link to an article about structured settlements and family wealth planning. No greeting, no explanation, just the link and a line underneath, interesting read. Planning ahead prevents waste. That was Connor's style. He never shoved when he could position himself near a doorway and make you think blocking it was your idea. I forwarded the message to Marlene. She called me within 10 minutes. Has he asked you directly about the settlement? Not directly. He will, she said. Do not discuss numbers. She then told me something she had planned to raise at our next meeting. Connor had already called her office once, on December 9th, identifying himself as a family financial advisor helping coordinate post-settlement distribution. He had used enough correct language to sound plausible. My stomach went cold. Her paralegal had disclosed nothing, but he had asked whether mortgage payoff and business debt settlement could be routed through a third party if a family member preferred not to manage the details. We logged the call, Marlene said. At the time, I did not know whether he had your permission. Now I suspect he did not. I sat at my kitchen table with Daniel's old coffee mug in front of me and stared at the Christmas card my mother had mailed, the one with a printed message about peace on earth and a handwritten note asking us to arrive by 4 because dinner would be structured this year. Structured. The word felt different after learning Connor had tried to circle the money. I should have cancelled right then. Instead, I told myself the envelopes, because they were guarded and conditional, would prevent manipulation. I thought the best way to stop speculation was to bring truth in a controlled form. That was my mistake. People who feel entitled to your sacrifice do not become safer because you present boundaries nicely. They treat the boundaries as packaging. On Christmas Eve, Mia and I wrapped small gifts at the kitchen table. She had chosen a candle for my mother, a puzzle for my father, a scarf for Eliza, and a set of fancy cocoa mixes for the cousins. Her gifts were thoughtful in the way children are thoughtful when they still believe adults deserve their effort. She asked if Grandma would like the candle. I said yes because I wanted it to be true. Then she asked, will Aunt Eliza's kids get more presents than me again? I paused with the tape in my hand. Does that bother you? She shrugged, looking down. They always say theirs are big because they're older. But I'm older than I was last year. That sentence went straight through me. I remembered every Christmas where I told myself Eliza needed more because she was older, then because she was getting started, then because she was struggling, then because she was fragile, then because that was just how things were. The reason changed. The imbalance did not. I looked at Mia and almost told her we did not have to go. But I had those envelopes in my bag and some stubborn, wounded part of me still believed this Christmas could mark a before and after. I said, whatever happens tomorrow, you and I stay together. She smiled at that, small but real. And Daddy's picture? I looked toward the framed photo on the counter, Daniel in his work jacket, sun in his eyes, one hand raised because he hated posed photographs. And Daddy's picture, I said. That night, after Mia slept, I opened the envelopes one more time. The mortgage payoff draft for my parents showed a cure amount that could have saved the house before acceleration. The property tax page was ugly but manageable. Eliza's debt settlement packet was more embarrassing than catastrophic if handled quickly. The emergency trust draft was modest, not a blank family fund, but enough to prevent future crises from becoming whispered guilt calls. I placed them back in the folder and imagined my mother crying from relief, my father finally admitting that Daniel and I had carried more than they knew, Eliza saying thank you like she meant it. Hope is not always soft. Sometimes it is a form of self-harm disguised as generosity. I did not know that yet. Or maybe I knew and went anyway. Christmas at my parents' house had always looked better than it felt. My mother knew how to stage warmth. Red ribbon on the banister. Pine garland over the doorway. Candles that smelled like oranges and cloves. Matching napkin rings. A centerpiece of white flowers and cranberries that she probably told someone she threw together, though I knew it had taken an hour of rearranging. From the outside, the house looked like forgiveness lived there. Mia held my hand as we walked up the front path, her backpack bouncing against her side because she had insisted on bringing her stuffed rabbit, a coloring book, and the small framed photo of Daniel she kept near her bed. "Do I have to hug everyone?" she whispered before I rang the bell. I looked down at her, at the serious little line between her brows that should not have belonged to a 7-year-old. "Only if you want to." She thought about that. "Grandma gets weird if I don't." That sentence should have made me turn around. Instead, I squeezed her hand and told myself we were there for a new beginning. My mother opened the door wearing a cream sweater and lipstick that had never survived one of my childhood Christmases but somehow survived hers. "There you are," she said, not quite warmly. Her eyes moved over my coat, then Mia's dress. "Oh, Mia, that's sweet. Very simple." Simple. The same word Eliza used when she wanted cheap to sound like a character flaw. Eliza swept in behind her wearing velvet and gold earrings, kissed the air beside my cheek, and said, "You look tired, Ratch." But honestly, who wouldn't? Connor stood near the bar cart with my father, laughing about interest rates like men who believed they understood money because they could pronounce terms from other people's paperwork. He raised his glass when he saw me. "Hey, widow warrior." Grief as a nickname. I felt Mia's hand tighten in mine. My father gave me a brief one-armed hug that smelled like aftershave and distance. "You made it," he said. Not "Merry Christmas." Not "How are you?" You made it, as if I had been expected to fail. I set my bag in the kitchen cabinet when no one was looking, tucking the envelopes behind the holiday platters because I wanted the moment later to feel calm and intentional. That small secrecy became important. If I had placed them under the tree like gifts, they might have opened them before dinner and performed gratitude long enough to confuse me. Instead, dinner began with the truth still hidden. The first humiliation was small enough for everyone to deny. Mia's gift from my parents was a thin coloring book and a pack of crayons from the dollar bin. Eliza's children opened a tablet, a remote control car, a name-brand dollhouse, and matching pajamas my mother wanted photographed under the tree. Mia smiled at her coloring book because she was a good child, and being a good child in that house meant protecting adults from the evidence of their choices. When my mother arranged everyone for pictures, she placed Eliza's children on either side of her and told Mia to stand near the arm of the couch because we need balance. Balance meant visible but peripheral. I saw it. Mia felt it. My father saw nothing because seeing would have required action. At the table, Eliza's children took the good seats near my parents without asking. Mia and I were placed near the corner beside a wobbly side chair my mother said was just temporary, though no one else moved. Eliza's kids shouted about video games, reached over serving dishes, spilled cranberry sauce on the table runner, and my mother laughed like noise was proof of life. Mia whispered thank you every time someone passed food and kept her elbows tucked in so tightly she looked like she was trying not to take up oxygen. Twice, my mother told her to speak up. Once, when Mia did speak, Connor interrupted her to tell a story about a client who actually understood leverage, and Mia went quiet for the rest of the meal. The little cuts came between bites. Eliza asked if I was still working part-time at that billing place, though she knew I coordinated hospice billing and patient accounts, work that required more patience and accuracy than anything she had ever done at her boutique. My mother said grief could become a habit if you were not careful. My father said Eliza and Connor had been under real pressure this year with the business climate. Connor asked whether I was still in that tight phase after everything, then smiled as if he had shown concern instead of greed. I could have ended the performance right there. I could have said I knew about the default notice. I knew about the tax arrears. I knew Eliza's boutique had not paid rent since August. I knew Connor had called Marlene's office. But I kept thinking of the envelopes. I kept thinking generosity would make me bigger than the room. Then dessert was mentioned, and Eliza set down her fork with theatrical care. She looked at my mother first, which told me the scene had been planned. My mother lowered her eyes. My father's shoulders tightened. Connor sat back to watch. Eliza folded her hands and said, before dessert, we need to talk about next year. Actually, about all of this going forward. I felt Mia's knee bump mine under the table. All of what? I asked, though my body already knew. Eliza made the sad face she used when she wanted cruelty to look mature. You bring a lot of heaviness, Rachel. We understand why, obviously, but it's been almost a year. The kids pick up on it. Mom gets anxious. Dad gets stressed. And Mia is sweet, but she just sits there like everyone has to tiptoe around her. Mia looked down at her plate. My heart moved toward her so fast it hurt. Do not bring my daughter into this, I said. My mother sighed softly. Nobody is attacking Mia. Then she looked at me, and the softness in her voice turned the knife rather than dulled it. But Christmas is easier when you're not here making everyone feel guilty. Eliza nodded, encouraged. Maybe it would be best if you and Mia left before dessert. And honestly, Rachel, maybe you should take some real space from the family for a while. Like, not come back until you're in a healthier place. Connor added, boundaries are healthy. My father did not defend me. He did not defend Mia. He stared down at his plate, jaw working once, twice, then still. I looked at my mother. You want us to leave Christmas dinner? She did not blink. I think it would be better for everyone. Eliza said, you should leave and not make this ugly. And there it was, the sentence that freed me because it was too clear to excuse. I turned to Mia and kept my voice gentle. Honey, get your coat and backpack. Her chair scraped softly. She did not cry. She only nodded and whispered, okay, Mommy, like leaving was not a shock, only confirmation. I can still see the counter under my hands when I pulled the envelopes from the cabinet. My mother's kitchen had always been spotless in the places guests could see and chaotic behind the doors. The holiday platters rattled when I moved them, and that tiny domestic sound made the moment feel almost absurd. There I was, a widow with a 7-year-old in the hallway, holding the documents that could have erased my parents' mortgage arrears and pulled my sister's business back from the cliff, while the people those documents were meant to help sat in the dining room congratulating themselves for removing me from Christmas. I placed the envelopes on the counter one by one. The first contained the copy of the mortgage payoff authorization Marlene had prepared, current payoff quote, delinquent property tax cure, direct wire instructions to the lender, no funds touching my parents' personal account, all contingent on my final signature after family discussion. The second contained Eliza's debt settlement draft, boutique lease arrears, 2 vendor balances, 1 business credit card negotiated down only if paid before January 15th, and a strict clause excluding any transfer to Connor. The third contained the emergency trust proposal, a modest fund, not extravagant, designed to prevent future family crises from becoming late-night guilt calls, with me as grantor and Marlene's office coordinating trusteeship. In my imagination, when I had packed them, those envelopes were going to be proof that I still believed in family. On the counter that night, they became proof that belief can be revoked. Rachel, my mother said from the doorway, whatever this is, it's not necessary. Eliza came up behind her. Oh my God, are those letters? Are you seriously going to make us read grief letters at dinner? Connor snorted, but he did not look amused for long. Men like Connor recognize paper before they recognize pain. My father stood slowly, perhaps because the envelopes looked too formal to dismiss, or perhaps because fathers like mine can sense when authority is leaving their hands. What is this? He asked. I looked at him, and for 1 second the old reflex tried to rise. Explain. Soften. Make sure Dad does not feel disrespected. Then I saw Mia's backpack strap at the edge of the hallway, her little fingers wrapped around it, and the reflex died. "These were for after dessert," I said. "Since you asked us to leave before dessert, they are no longer needed." Eliza rolled her eyes. "You are unbelievable." I picked up the first envelope. This one was for Mom and Dad. I tore it. My mother flinched as if I had slapped her, though she still did not know what was inside. "Stop being dramatic," she said, but the confidence had thinned. I picked up the second. This one was for Eliza. My sister's expression flickered. She had always assumed anything with her name on it should be opened, not destroyed. I tore that one, too. Connor stood. "Okay, enough." My father said my name again, warning now. I picked up the third envelope. This one was for all of you. The paper was thick. It resisted for half a second before giving way, and that little resistance felt like the last piece of my old self trying to keep the peace. I dropped the pieces in 3 neat piles. Eliza lunged first, angry in the spoiled way of people who believe every closed door is an insult. "What did you just tear?" She grabbed a piece, then another, and tried to align them on the counter. Connor leaned over her shoulder. My mother picked up a piece from the first pile. My father came around the island, suddenly moving with purpose. It took them maybe 30 seconds to see the letterhead. Another 30 to see the words mortgage payoff. Another 15 for Eliza to find debt settlement and her boutique's name. Connor's face changed on the clause excluding direct payment to him. My mother whispered, "Frank." My father snatched the piece from her hand and read the numbers. I watched calculation replace. Outrage. That was the worst part, and also the most clarifying. Not regret. Not shame over what they had said to Mia. Calculation. My mother looked at me with a face I had waited my whole life to see, but once it arrived, it did nothing for me. "Rachel," she said, voice shaking, "you were going to, what is this?" "Copies," I said. "Family discussion drafts. Nothing final." "Then it can be fixed," Connor said quickly, too quickly. "If they're copies, we can print them again." I looked at him. "No, Connor. You can't." He flushed at the sound of my certainty. My father's hand tightened around the torn mortgage quote. "You should have told us. Before or after you told my daughter she made Christmas heavy?" My mother started crying then, but I had seen enough of her tears to know the difference between grief and panic. "That's not what I meant." Eliza said, "Rachel, don't punish Mom and Dad because you're sensitive." I turned toward the hallway. Mia stood there in her coat, staring not at the torn papers but at the adults scrambling over them. That look on her face did what none of their words could. It ended the scene. I took her hand. My father stepped in front of me. "We need to sit down." I said, "We did. You asked us to leave." He blocked the kitchen doorway for half a second too long. Then Mia moved closer to me, and maybe some last fragment of fatherhood in him recognized how ugly the image was, a grown man blocking a widow and child from leaving after throwing them out. He stepped aside. We walked through the living room, past the tree, past the stockings, past the family photos arranged so Eliza's wedding portrait sat in the center and Daniel's funeral photo was nowhere visible. Behind us, paper rustled, voices rose, and Connor said something about calling the attorney. My mother followed us barefoot onto the porch, then down the steps onto the frozen walkway. "Rachel, please. Let's not make permanent decisions while everyone is emotional." I opened the car door for Mia. Everyone was calm when they told us to leave. My father came out holding the torn pieces like evidence in a case he had suddenly realized he was losing. "You don't get to walk away from family." I buckled Mia in and closed her door gently. Then I turned to him. "Watch me." I did not drive home. Home still smelled like Daniel in small places, in the garage near his workbench, in the closet where one flannel shirt remained because I had not been brave enough to wash it, in the drawer where he used to keep spare batteries and receipts. I could not bring my daughter from one house full of rejection straight into another house full of absence. So I drove to a hotel near the interstate, the kind with a lobby fireplace that runs on gas and a bowl of apples nobody eats. On the way, my phone started buzzing before we reached the main road. My mother. Eliza. My father. Unknown number, which I guessed was Connor from some office line. Then my mother again. Mia did not ask why I was not answering. She only looked out the window at the Christmas lights passing in red and green streaks. After 10 minutes she said, "Did I do something wrong?" The question landed so hard I had to pull into a pharmacy parking lot because my hands forgot how to hold the steering wheel. I turned around in my seat. "No, baby. You did nothing wrong." She kept her eyes on her rabbit in her lap. Aunt Eliza said I make people tiptoe. I wanted to say adult things, angry things, things about projection and scapegoats and emotional cruelty, but she was 7. 7-year-olds do not need vocabulary for dysfunction. They need safety. I said, "Some grown-ups say unkind things when they don't want to look at their own behavior." She nodded in the solemn way children nod when they are pretending the answer is enough. Then she said, "Grandma likes Aunt Eliza's kids better." There was no question in it. Only observation. Daniel's voice came back to me then, not as memory but as instruction. "Would you want Mia to think this is love?" I looked at my daughter in the rearview mirror, her red dress wrinkled under her coat, her little face too tired for Christmas, and I finally answered him out loud. "No." Mia looked up. "What?" I wiped my face with the heel of my hand. "Nothing, sweetheart. We're going to get a room, and you can watch one Christmas movie before bed, and tomorrow we're going to have pancakes somewhere that doesn't make us feel small." At the hotel, the young woman at the desk wore reindeer earrings and had the exhausted cheer of someone working a holiday shift. She noticed Mia's dress, noticed my face, and upgraded us to a room with 2 queen beds without saying a word about it. Kindness from strangers can feel unbearable when family has made cruelty feel normal. Mia took a bath, put on pajamas from her backpack, and ate vending machine pretzels under the blanket while a cartoon played softly on the television. I sat at the little desk by the window and watched snow start to fall in the parking lot. My phone showed 27 missed calls and 14 texts. I opened none of them at first. I opened my email. Marlene had given me her emergency address for anything related to the settlement account, though she had said, "Please do not use this on Christmas unless someone is dead, arrested, or trying to touch the money." I typed the subject line slowly, "Revocation of all proposed family gift instructions." My hands shook only once, on the word all. Then they steadied. I wrote exactly what she had taught me to write. "I am withdrawing all pending family gift discussions and proposed authorizations, including but not limited to the Mercer mortgage payoff draft, Eliza Grant debt settlement draft, and family emergency trust proposal. Do not release documents, amounts, payoff quotes, creditor information, or settlement details to Linda Mercer, Frank Mercer, Eliza Grant, Connor Grant, or any person claiming to represent them without my direct written consent. Confirm receipt when possible." I read it twice. I thought I would feel cruel. Instead, I felt the first inch of solid ground. I pressed send at 9:46 p.m. on Christmas night while my daughter slept with Daniel's photograph beside her pillow. Then I opened the texts. My mother had begun with pleading and moved quickly into injury. "Rachel, please call. You misunderstood us. Your father is devastated. We can fix this as a family. Then, you cannot wave that kind of money in our faces and take it away. Then, think about what Daniel would want." Eliza's texts were sharper. "You are sick. You set us up. You wanted to humiliate us. How dare you use his death like this?" Connor's unknown number said, "This is bigger than your feelings. Call me before you make a financial mistake." My father left one voicemail. I listened to it once. His voice was tight, controlled, the same tone he used when I was a teenager and had failed to anticipate someone else's need. "Rachel, this has gone far enough. You do not bring legal documents into my house, tear them up like a child, and then run off. We will discuss this tomorrow. You owe your mother an apology. You owe all of us an explanation. I set the phone face down. The old Rachel would have called back. She would have explained the hurt, clarified the paperwork, reassured them that she was not trying to destroy anyone. That Rachel had driven away from my parents' house and left pieces of herself on the road behind her. I looked at Mia asleep in the blue hotel light and opened my banking app, not because I needed to move money, but because I needed to see the accounts as they were: protected, named, documented. Daniel Mercer Memorial Trust for Mia. Mercer Household Reserve. Settlement remainder account under advisor oversight. Numbers, yes, but also walls. Doors. Locks. Proof that love could be structured in a way manipulation could not easily enter. I turned off the ringer, pulled the blanket over Mia's shoulder, and finally lay down beside her. For the first time since Daniel died, I slept without dreaming of falling. Marlene called at 7:12 the next morning, which told me she had been checking email before coffee. I received your revocation, she said, no hello, no holiday softness. Are you safe? That was why I trusted her. Not, are you sure? Not, what happened? Are you safe? I told her we were at a hotel and physically fine. She listened while I summarized Christmas dinner in the cleanest terms I could manage: asked to leave, documents torn, family saw copies, immediate pressure, multiple calls from Connor. When I said Connor had texted from an unknown number telling me not to make a financial mistake, Marlene made a sound that was not quite a laugh. Forward that to me. She confirmed what I needed to hear. Nothing had been signed. No funds had been released. The family copies were informational drafts, not operative instructions. My revocation was clear. Her office would flag the file so no one could obtain information by sounding confident on the phone. Then she returned to what she had disclosed before Christmas. Rachel, the call from Connor matters now. We have the date, time, and internal note. He identified himself as a family financial advisor helping coordinate post-settlement distribution. We disclosed nothing, but he asked whether mortgage payoff and business debt settlement could be handled through a third party. I sat up so quickly the blanket slid off my legs. Outside, someone's car alarm chirped, ordinary life continuing because ordinary life is rude that way. He knew enough to ask before Christmas. Yes. And they still told us to leave. Marlene was quiet for a moment. People who are trying to control a decision sometimes create emotional pressure first. You did not respond the way they expected. I looked over at Mia, still asleep, one arm thrown over her rabbit. Connor had known enough to call. Maybe not the amount, maybe not the exact documents, but enough to circle the money before I ever brought envelopes to Christmas. Suddenly his dinner comments had a different shape. Still in that tight phase. This is bigger than your feelings. Call me before you make a financial mistake. He had not been surprised by the existence of help. He had been surprised I had the power to withdraw it. Marlene said, do not speak to him by phone. Do not speak to any of them by phone if you can avoid it. Keep everything in writing. If they come to your house, do not let them in. If you feel threatened, call the police. And Rachel? Yes? You did not take money from them. You declined to give them yours. Keep that sentence close. I did. I wrote it in the notes app on my phone while Mia slept. You did not take money from them. You declined to give them yours. That morning, I took Mia to a diner with tinsel around the windows and waitresses who called everyone honey because they meant it professionally, and sometimes professionally is enough. Mia ordered chocolate chip pancakes and ate half of them with the concentration of a child returning to her body after a bad night. Halfway through breakfast, my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Amy, who rarely spoke in the family group chat but noticed everything. Are you okay? Eliza is saying you had a breakdown at dinner and tore up legal papers because Mom asked you to leave calmly. I looked at the message for a long time. There it was, the family story, already under construction. My mother and Eliza had spent years making sure they narrated first. If they defined the scene as Rachel being unstable, then anything I said afterward became evidence of instability. Daniel used to call it pouring the concrete before the truth arrives. I did not answer Amy immediately. I took Mia back to the hotel, packed our things, and drove home in daylight. The house felt different when I unlocked the door, not empty exactly, but waiting. Daniel's work boots were still in the garage. His lunch cooler still sat on the shelf. His absence did not shrink because my family had behaved badly. Grief does not politely step aside for new problems. It becomes the room everything else happens in. I made Mia soup, put on another movie, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. Then I opened the folder Daniel had made me keep years ago. The fog made visible. Bank transfers to Linda and Frank Mercer. Checks. Venmo receipts. Zelle confirmations. Property tax assistance. Utility payments. Eliza boutique support. Vendor payments I had made directly because Daniel had insisted direct was safer. I had not opened that folder since before he died because looking at it made me feel foolish. Now it made me feel prepared. I created a timeline, not emotional, not accusatory, just dates and numbers. Over 11 years, Daniel and I had provided $18,640 in direct support to my parents and $7,380 related to Eliza's boutique and personal debts. After Daniel's death, my mother provided one grocery delivery and a $400 check, then publicly characterized herself as my support system. On Christmas, they asked me and my minor child to leave before dessert. After seeing attorney-prepared drafts of potential gifts, they attempted to pressure me to reinstate them. I did not post it. Not yet. I saved it. Because Marlene was right. Noise was coming. You do not need to shout into noise. You need to know where your documents are when it arrives. The noise began that afternoon in the family group chat. Eliza posted first, because of course she did. She wrote that Christmas had been emotionally devastating, because I had arrived with a weaponized legal stunt, and terrified Mom by tearing up documents at the counter. She said everyone was worried about me. She said grief had made me unstable. She said Daniel would be heartbroken to see me use his memory as leverage. My mother followed with a paragraph that looked gentle to anyone who did not know the code. We love Rachel and Mia so much. We have tried to support them through unimaginable loss. Last night we attempted to set a healthy boundary, and Rachel reacted in a way that scared us. Please pray for healing. Pray for healing is a powerful phrase when used by people who want applause for injuring you softly. Aunt Gloria responded with hearts. Uncle Mark wrote that money makes people ugly. A cousin I barely knew said trauma can make widows irrational. Nobody asked what boundary required sending a 7-year-old out into the cold on Christmas. Nobody asked why my family had been close enough to read attorney documents if they were so afraid of me. Nobody asked why Eliza knew the papers were financial if I had simply arrived with a stunt. I felt the old heat rise in my face, the childlike panic of being misrepresented in a room where everyone believed the better actress. Mia was coloring at the kitchen counter, humming under her breath, and that sound kept me anchored. I opened the draft timeline. Then I opened the family chat. My hands were steady. I wrote one message, just one, because if you argue with a performance, you become part of it. Last night, after my mother said Christmas was easier without me and my sister asked my daughter and me to leave before dessert, I withdrew proposed financial assistance I had been considering for the family. The documents were attorney-prepared drafts for direct payments to lenders and creditors, not cash gifts and not final authorizations. Since there seems to be confusion about who has supported whom, here are the records I am comfortable sharing. Then I attached screenshots with account numbers blacked out, years of transfers to my parents, direct payments to Eliza's boutique creditors, the $400 check from my mother after Daniel died, and the Facebook post where she had presented grocery bags like a ministry project. I did not include the settlement amount. I did not include the mortgage payoff quote. I did not include Eliza's creditor names. I did not need to. The pattern did the work. Silence hit the chat for 6 minutes. 6 minutes is a long time in a family that can produce opinions faster than facts. Amy messaged privately, "I had no idea." Aunt Gloria deleted her heart reaction. Uncle Mark wrote, "Wait, Frank, you took money from Rachel all those years?" My father did not answer. Eliza did. She wrote, "This is private financial abuse. You are humiliating us." I typed back, "I learned privacy from the people who posted grocery bags after my husband died." Then I muted the chat. That evening, my mother called 11 times. My father called 3. Connor texted again, "You have exposed incomplete information and created liability for yourself." I forwarded it to Marlene. She replied with one sentence, "He sounds nervous." That made 2 of us, but my nervousness had changed flavor. I was no longer afraid they would stop loving me if I said no. I was afraid of what they might do because they had never loved me correctly in the first place. The next day, I changed the locks. Not because my parents had keys, they did not. Because Daniel had once said that symbolic security still counts if it helps you sleep. I changed passwords, added a verbal code to Marlene's office, froze my credit and Mia's, moved paper files into a locking cabinet, and told Mia's school that no one except me and my friend Patrice could pick her up. The school secretary looked surprised when I updated the emergency contact list, removing my parents and Eliza. "Family situation?" she asked gently. I thought of Christmas dinner, Mia's little hands on her fork, my mother's voice saying, "Easier without you." "Yes," I said. "A family situation." On the drive home, Mia asked if Grandma was mad. I said, "Probably." She asked if we were in trouble. I said, "No." Then she said, "Are we still going to have Christmas?" I pulled into the driveway and looked at our small house, the porch light Daniel had installed himself, the wreath Mia and I had bought because she liked the silver bells. "Yes," I said. "We're going to have ours." We spent December 27th making cinnamon rolls from a tube, opening the few gifts I had left under our tree, and watching Mia's new art set take over the living room floor. It was not the Christmas I had wanted for her. But it was the first holiday of her life where no one told her to be smaller so adults could feel bigger. For 3 days, my family tried every door they knew. My mother used guilt. She left voicemails that began with crying and ended with instructions. "Rachel, your father's blood pressure is up. He hasn't slept. I don't know how you can do this when you know the house is at risk. We never would have asked you to leave if we had known what you were planning." That sentence became the whole problem in miniature. Not, "We never should have asked you to leave. If we had known." My father used authority. His texts were brief, punctuated like orders. "We need to meet. Bring the documents. Do not involve attorneys in family matters. You owe us a chance to resolve this." Eliza used shame. She sent long messages accusing me of enjoying her failure, of punishing her children, of being jealous that she had always been easier to love. Connor used pressure disguised as expertise. He wrote that the mortgage payoff draft had created reasonable reliance, a phrase Marlene laughed at so sharply over the phone that I almost felt sorry for him. "Reasonable reliance on an unsigned draft presented after they expelled you from Christmas dinner," she said. He should stop borrowing vocabulary. But Connor did not stop. He sent a formal-looking email from his business account with a subject line, "Preservation of Family Financial Agreement." In it, he claimed I had made a verbal commitment to rescue my parents' property and stabilize Eliza's business obligations, and that rescinding the arrangement after family members had become aware of it could cause damages. He copied my father. He copied Eliza. He did not copy my mother, perhaps because even Connor knew she performed better when she could claim she did not understand the paperwork. I forwarded it to Marlene. She asked if I wanted her to respond. I said yes. Her reply was 3 paragraphs and a masterpiece of professional violence. She stated that no agreement existed, no funds had been authorized, no reliance could arise from unsigned conditional drafts prepared for a discussion that never occurred, and any further attempt by Connor Grant to obtain information about my settlement or pressure me through false legal claims would be documented. She copied only him and me. Connor did not email again that day. Instead, Eliza posted a photograph on Facebook of her boutique window with a caption about surviving betrayal with grace. I almost admired the stamina. But public sympathy did not pay rent. On December 30th, I received a call from a woman named Teresa Bell, a commercial loan officer at a regional bank. I knew her only because we had gone to high school together and because Daniel had once fixed her porch railing after noticing it was loose at a barbecue. She sounded uncomfortable. "Rachel, I can't discuss anyone's private file," she said, "which is how you know someone wants to tell you something without telling you something. But your name has come up in conversation with Connor Grant in a way that made me think you should be careful. He implied family settlement funds might be pledged or used to cure obligations connected to a business line. I told him nothing can be considered without direct documentation from the fund holder. He said documentation was forthcoming." My stomach tightened. "Did he say my name?" "Yes." She paused. "And Daniel's." That was the moment Connor stopped being annoying and became something colder. It is one thing to circle money. It is another to use a dead man's name as bait in a bank conversation. I thanked Teresa, wrote down the date and time, and sent the notes to Marlene. Then I opened the box where Daniel's site notebooks were stored. It had nothing to do with Connor, not directly, but I needed to touch proof of my husband's real life after hearing someone use his death like a funding source. The top notebook still had dust in the spiral. Daniel's handwriting filled page after page. Hazard reported, supervisor notified, guardrail missing, worker concern repeated. He had believed documentation mattered because people in power often lie calmly. I pressed my palm flat against one page and said, "I'm trying." That evening, my father came to my house. He did not call first. He knocked hard enough for Mia to drop a colored pencil. Through the peephole I saw him on the porch in his old brown jacket, shoulders hunched against the cold, looking less like a father than a man arriving to collect something overdue. I told Mia to go to her room and put on music. Then I opened the door with the chain still on. My father looked at the chain, offended. "Really? What do you need, Dad? Do not talk to me like I'm some stranger." I waited. He looked past me into the house. "We need to sit down like adults. Adults call before coming over." His jaw worked. "Your mother is falling apart." "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. You're enjoying this." I almost responded the old way, defensive, desperate to make him see my heart. Instead, I thought of Marlene's sentence. "You declined to give them yours." "I'm not enjoying anything. I'm protecting myself and Mia." His face hardened at her name. "Don't use that child as an excuse." The chain suddenly felt very thin. My voice stayed level. "Leave." He stared at me, shocked not by the word but by the absence of wobble in it. "Rachel. Leave, or I'll call someone to help you leave." He stepped back as if the porch itself had shifted under him. "You have changed." "No," I said. "I have records now." I closed the door before he could answer. My hands shook afterward, but my voice had not. That counted. Some victories are invisible unless you know what they cost. New Year's Eve brought the second performance. My mother called from Eliza's phone because I had stopped answering hers. I let it go to voicemail, then listened while standing in the laundry room, folding Mia's pajamas because ordinary chores have saved more people from collapse than inspirational quotes ever will. Eliza's voice came first, brittle and formal. "Rachel, Mom and Dad are coming over tomorrow with me and Connor. We are not asking. This has become an emergency." Then my mother, crying in the background, said, "Please, honey. We just want to see Mia. We have gifts for her. We need to heal before the new year." Gifts. Healing. Emergency. 3 words my family used when they wanted access. I texted back one sentence, "Do not come to my house without an invitation." They came anyway at 10:15 the next morning. I saw them through the front window before they reached the porch, my father carrying a bakery box, my mother holding a gift bag with tissue paper puffed out like a peace offering, Eliza in a camel coat, Connor with his phone already in hand. It was almost impressive, the way they could turn trespassing into a tableau of family concern. Mia was in the kitchen eating cereal. She froze when she heard the doorbell. "Is it them?" she asked. I hated that she knew. "Yes." "Do I have to say hi?" "No." She slid off the chair and went to the hallway, not hiding exactly, but placing herself behind the wall where she could hear without being seen. I opened the door but stepped outside, closing it behind me. My mother immediately tried to look past me. "Where's Mia?" "Inside. We brought her Christmas gifts." "Christmas was last week." Eliza inhaled sharply. "That is cruel." Connor lifted both hands in a calming gesture nobody had requested. "We all need to lower the temperature here." I looked at him. "You can start by not contacting banks about my money." For the first time, my father looked at Connor before looking at me. Just a flicker, but enough. Connor recovered quickly. "That's a mischaracterization. I was trying to understand options for the family. My husband's wrongful death settlement is not a family financing option." My mother flinched at the bluntness. "Good. Some phrases deserve to land without padding." My father set the bakery box on the porch rail. "Rachel, nobody is saying it like that." Connor did. Eliza stepped forward. "Stop attacking my husband when you're the one holding everyone hostage." "What am I holding hostage?" "The house," she snapped. "Mom and Dad's stability. My business. The family." "No," I said. "Their lender holds the mortgage. Their tax office holds the arrears. Your landlord holds your lease. Your creditors hold your debt. I hold my money." My father's face flushed. "After everything we did for you." That old phrase, dragged out like a family heirloom. I felt strangely calm. "Name it." He blinked. "What?" "Name what you did for me that you did not also do for Eliza 10 times over. Name the thing that means I owe you Daniel's settlement." My mother began crying harder, but not because she had an answer. Eliza said, "This is disgusting." Connor said, "You are escalating." I said, "You came to my house after I told you not to." My father pointed toward the door. "I want to see my granddaughter." The hallway behind me went very quiet. I knew Mia was listening. I opened the door slightly and turned, not enough for them to see inside. "Mia, sweetheart, do you want to come say hello?" A pause. Then her small voice came from behind the wall. "No, thank you." My mother made a sound like I had coached her to stab them. "Mia, baby, Grandma brought you." I closed the door again, gently but firmly. She said no. Eliza's face twisted. "You've turned her against us." That sentence did something useful. It removed the last temptation to soften. "No. You told her we should leave Christmas because we made the room heavy. She understood you perfectly." My father looked away then. "Not sorry." Cornered. There is a difference. Connor's phone was angled too high, and I realized he might be recording. I smiled at him, not warmly. "Make sure the recording includes that I asked you not to come, you came anyway, and you are now being told to leave." His thumb moved. Eliza grabbed his arm. My mother whispered, "Rachel, please." For a moment, I saw not my mother but a woman terrified of consequences she had mistaken for cruelty because she had never expected them from me. "You don't get access to my daughter after teaching her she was unwanted," I said. "Not with gifts. Not with cake. Not with tears." My father picked up the bakery box and hurled it into the snow beside the porch. It split open, white frosting smeared across the ground like something small had died there. "You'll regret this," he said. I opened the door. I already regret a lot. Not this. Inside, Mia stood in the hallway clutching her rabbit. I locked the door, then knelt in front of her. She did not cry. She only asked, "Was Grandma sad because I said no?" I swallowed. Grandma is upset because she is not used to hearing no. Mia thought about that. I don't like saying no. Me neither, I said. But sometimes no is how you keep yourself safe. She nodded slowly, then looked toward the window where the gift bag sat abandoned on the porch. Can we throw away the present? I looked at the bag, then at her. Yes. She helped me do it. That mattered more than I expected. Sometimes healing looks like a child learning she does not have to accept a gift from someone who hurt her. The final unraveling began with a certified letter from the bank. It was addressed to my parents, not me, but my father brought it into my life by sending a photograph of the first page with the message, "This is what you are doing to us." The letter was a notice of intent to accelerate if arrears were not cured. I stared at the image and felt the old pull of emergency. Then I enlarged the date. The notice had been issued December 18th, a full week before Christmas dinner. My family had known the house was at risk when they told me to leave. They had not been blindsided by my withdrawal. They had been counting on my help while treating me as disposable. I sent the image to Marlene. She replied, "This predates your decision. Save it." I saved everything. The bank notice. Connor's texts. The Christmas voicemails. The Facebook posts. Teresa's call notes. The photo of the cake smashed into the snow, because even frosting can become evidence if it shows who came after being told not to. 2 days later, Amy called me. Not texted. Called. I almost did not answer, but something in me was tired of letting the loudest relatives be the only ones with voices. Amy was my mother's niece, about my age, quiet at family events, a nurse who had seen enough drama professionally not to volunteer for extra. "I'm sorry," she said as soon as I answered. I believed parts of it at first. That honesty made me trust her more than instant loyalty would have. "What parts?" "That you brought papers to hurt them. That grief had made you." "I don't know." "Dramatic." She sighed. "Then I saw the records you posted. And then Gloria told me your mom admitted, accidentally, that they knew you might have settlement money before Christmas." I sat down at the kitchen table. "How?" "Connor." "Of course." Amy explained that Connor had overheard someone at the boutique mention a wrongful death payout after seeing a local article about Daniel's case settlement. He had asked Eliza. Eliza had asked my mother. My mother had told my father. None of them had asked me. Instead, they had speculated. They assumed I had money and had not offered because I was bitter. They assumed Christmas would be the right time to pressure me into remembering family. The decision to ask me and Mia to leave had not been about wanting me gone forever. It had been a tactic, Amy said quietly. Eliza told Gloria they thought if you felt excluded, you'd panic and try to buy your way back in. I closed my eyes. The room went silent except for the refrigerator humming. There it was, the old system spoken plainly. They had not accidentally mistreated me before learning I was useful. They had mistreated me because they believed mistreatment was how to activate my usefulness. I thanked Amy. She started crying a little. "Rachel, I'm sorry about Mia. I keep thinking about her sitting there." "Me too," I said. "Every hour." After we hung up, I did not cry. That surprised me. Maybe there are truths so ugly they cauterize instead of cut. I opened my notes and added Amy's summary to the timeline, marked as secondhand unless she was willing to write it down. She texted 10 minutes later, "You can write that I told you. I'll confirm if needed." That same afternoon, Eliza's landlord filed for eviction on the boutique space. I learned because Eliza posted a video, tearful but lit beautifully, saying small businesses were under attack and people she loved had chosen revenge over community. She did not mention 4 months of unpaid rent. She did not mention the vendor who had stopped shipping because checks bounced. She did not mention the business credit card statement Marlene later obtained through documents Eliza herself sent while trying to prove hardship. My parents' situation worsened the next week. The tax arrears were larger than the number my mother had hinted at. The mortgage was behind by more than 2 months. Connor had not technically put my parents' house into Eliza's business loan, but he had encouraged my father to sign a personal guarantee on a consolidation note connected to the boutique's debt, using the house's equity as the story of repayment even if not a formal lien. It was messy, stupid, and exactly the kind of arrangement Daniel would have spotted in 2 minutes and called a trap. When my father realized Connor's temporary bridge had made him look worse to the lender, he called me from my mother's phone because I had blocked his. I answered only because I did not know it was him. "Rachel," he said, and he sounded older. For one dangerous second, I thought age might mean humility. "If you pay the arrears, we can still save the house. Not the whole thing. Just the arrears. We'll figure out the rest. Not I'm sorry. Not how is Mia. Not I should never have let them say that at dinner. Just a smaller invoice." "No," I said. He breathed hard into the phone. "This is your childhood home." "No," I said again. "It was the house I grew up in." He was quiet. I continued, because some truths are not for persuasion but for record. A home is where your child can eat Christmas dinner without being told her sadness is inconvenient. He hung up. I set the phone down and waited for guilt to come. It came, but it did not rule. That was new. Guilt can knock. It does not have to own keys. The strongest public moment did not happen in a courtroom or at Marlene's office. It happened in a mortgage conference room with beige walls, a humming printer, and a framed photograph of a covered bridge that looked like every small-town bank decoration ever chosen by a committee. Teresa had warned me that my parents and Connor were trying to get a meeting with the lender to discuss anticipated family funds. Marlene decided we should attend, not because I owed anyone negotiation, but because she wanted the record corrected before Connor turned implication into a paper trail. "We are not going to argue," she told me in the parking lot. "We are going to place facts in a room where fiction has been invited." My parents were already there when we walked in. My mother sat with a tissue folded into a perfect square in her hand. My father looked exhausted and angry in the way people look when consequences have kept them awake. Eliza was beside Connor, whispering furiously. Connor had a folder open in front of him, and the second he saw Marlene, his face tightened. The bank manager, Mr. Holloway, was a careful man in his 50s who looked like he had spent his career learning that family financial meetings are where dignity goes to be tested. He greeted us and said, "We're here to clarify whether there is an external payoff source available before any further action on the account." Connor began before anyone asked him to. There was a proposed family settlement allocation that would cure the arrears, taxes, and related obligations. Unfortunately, Rachel has become emotional and is withholding cooperation. Marlene placed one document on the table. Not a stack. One document. My client revoked all proposed gift discussions on Christmas night. No authorization was ever signed. No funds were ever approved for transfer. Mr. Grant has no authority to speak on behalf of my client, her trust, her settlement account, or any entity connected to the Daniel Mercer estate. Connor leaned forward. That's not the full context. Marlene placed a second document down. This is the internal log from my office noting Mr. Grant's December 9th call, during which he identified himself as a family financial advisor without authorization. This is my written notice instructing him not to misrepresent his relationship to my client's funds. This is a copy of his subsequent email claiming reliance on unsigned documents. Mr. Holloway's expression did not change much, but his pen stopped moving. Teresa, seated beside him, looked down at her notes. My father stared at Connor. "You called her lawyer before Christmas?" Connor's jaw tightened. "I was trying to be proactive." Eliza snapped, "Not now, Dad." Mr. Holloway cleared his throat. "For our purposes, the question is whether funds from Mrs. Mercer are available to cure the arrears." Marlene said, "They are not." The room was very still. My mother whispered, "Rachel." I looked at her. I could have looked away, but I wanted her to understand that this answer was not an emotional outburst. It was a position. "No funds are available," I said. Connor's folder closed slowly. "This is vindictive." Teresa looked up then, and for the first time, her professional tone sharpened. "Mr. Grant, arrears on this account predate Christmas. Any suggestion that Mrs. Mercer caused this default is not supported by the file." My father's face went red. My mother started crying. Eliza hissed, "This is humiliating." The word almost made me laugh because humiliation, in Eliza's mind, was not being told to leave Christmas dinner with your child. It was having accurate information read in front of a lender. Mr. Holloway continued, carefully, "Without an approved cure or refinance option, the bank will proceed according to the timeline in the notice. We can discuss alternatives with the account holders, but anticipated gifts cannot be used as a basis for delay." My father looked at me then, and for 1 second I saw a man who understood not only that help was gone, but that the story he had told himself about deserving it had lost its audience. "Rachel," he said, quieter now. "You could stop this." I thought of Mia at the table, one bite missing from her roll. I thought of Daniel's notebook, hazard reported, supervisor notified. I thought of all the years I had stepped between my family and consequence and called the bruises love. "I know," I said. My mother inhaled, hope flashing across her face. "I finished. And I'm choosing not to." Eliza stood so abruptly her chair hit the wall. "You are destroying this family." I did not stand. I did not raise my voice. No. I stopped financing the destruction and calling it peace. Connor reached for his folder, but Mr. Holloway stopped him. "Mr. Grant, before you go, the bank will need a written clarification that you do not represent Mrs. Mercer's funds in any capacity. Teresa will provide the form." Connor looked like a man who had swallowed glass. That was the first time I saw him lose control of the smoothness. It was not dramatic. He did not shout. He did not confess. He simply had to sign a paper saying the truth out loud in a room where everyone knew he had been lying around it. Sometimes that is enough. In the parking lot afterward, my father called after me. "Was it really enough?" I turned. "What?" He swallowed. "The amount. Was it really enough to save the house?" My mother stood behind him, crying silently. Eliza would not look at me. Connor was on the phone, already trying to repair whatever professional damage had just been done. I looked at the man who had taught me to be useful and realized he was not asking whether love had been enough. He was asking whether the money had been. "Yes," I said. Then I got in my car and left. Eliza's public collapse came a week later, and it would have been funny if there had not been children involved. She posted another video from inside the boutique, standing in front of half-empty shelves arranged carefully so the emptiness looked intentional. She wore no makeup, but in the kind of way that takes 20 minutes to prepare. "I don't usually share private things," she began, which was how people who share private things professionally announce the performance. She said her business had been sabotaged by someone close to her. She said family money had been promised and then cruelly withdrawn. She said she had built everything from nothing and was being punished for being the strong one. That phrase almost made me close the laptop. The strong one. Eliza had been carried so long she mistook being lifted for standing. Comments appeared quickly. Friends offered prayers. A local boutique owner wrote, "People don't understand how hard small business is." Someone from church wrote, "Shame on anyone who hurts family this way." I waited 24 hours because Marlene had taught me patience. Then I posted one response on my own page, not under Eliza's video, not in anger, just a clean statement with documents attached and private information redacted. I wrote that no business funds had been promised or authorized, that any discussions were conditional drafts withdrawn after Christmas dinner, and that I had previously made direct vendor payments to support the boutique over several years. I attached redacted proof, the vendor payment from 2019, the rent assistance from 2021, the credit card payoff from 2022, the text from Eliza asking me not to tell mom and dad because they'll make it weird, and the landlord notice dated before Christmas. Then I added one final screenshot, Eliza's voicemail transcript from the day after Christmas, where she said, "You don't get to punish me just because we asked you to leave before dessert." I did not need to add commentary. The date and her own words did the work. The reaction was slower than the family group chat but wider. People who had praised her video began deleting comments. One former employee wrote privately to say Eliza had missed payroll twice the previous summer. A vendor messaged that she was relieved someone finally said there were debt problems before Christmas. Aunt Gloria called my mother, then called Amy, then stopped posting hearts on anything. Eliza sent me one text, "You ruined me." I typed back, "Your unpaid rent did that." I did not send it. Some truths do not need delivery if the consequence has already arrived. The boutique closed at the end of January. Not relocated. Closed. The landlord changed the locks on a Tuesday morning while Eliza sat in her SUV in the parking lot pretending to be on a business call. Amy saw it because she was picking up prescriptions nearby and told me later, quietly, not with satisfaction but with the stunned sadness of watching someone's performance run out of stage. Eliza's children went to stay with my parents for a weekend while she and Connor argued about storage units, inventory, and who had signed which guarantee. My mother called once, left a voicemail saying the children were confused and asking why Aunt Rachel hated Mommy. I deleted it after saving it to the folder. Not because I planned to use it, but because documentation had become the way I refused to let their version of reality take the wheel again. Connor's professional consequences were less visible, but Teresa told me enough. His relationship with her bank was under review. A referral partner had asked for clarification after hearing he had represented access to funds that were not his clients'. He was not arrested. He was not dragged away in handcuffs. Life is usually less theatrical than justice should be. But his phone stopped ringing the same way. In small financial circles, trust is currency, and Connor had spent his pretending mine belonged to him. By February, he had changed firms and updated his profile with phrases like ethical lending and family-centered solutions. I laughed when I saw it, then closed the page. I had no interest in following his next mask. My parents' house moved toward sale. There were attempts at delay, a refinance application that went nowhere, an offer from a cousin that was really a rumor, and a final round of calls from my mother that began with, "Just the arrears," and ended with, "How can you sleep?" I slept better than she wanted me to. Not perfectly. Not peacefully every night. But better than I had when I was still trying to save people who used drowning as a way to hold my head underwater. The day my parents signed the listing agreement, my father sent one text, "Hope you're proud." I stared at it while Mia practiced spelling words at the table. Proud was the wrong word. I was not proud. I was free enough not to rescue him from a house he had used as proof of family while letting it become a place my child feared. I wrote nothing back. Silence, I was learning, could be a complete sentence. Marlene insisted we hold one formal meeting before the situation degraded into lawsuits people threatened but could not afford. "Not because you owe them negotiation," she said. "Because a controlled meeting creates a record and may stop porch theater." We scheduled it for the second Tuesday in February at her office. I did not want to go, but I agreed because I was tired of my family claiming they had been denied the chance to talk. Marlene's conference room was small, with a rectangular table, a speakerphone, and a framed print of a lighthouse that looked like it had seen better metaphors. I arrived with a folder Daniel would have appreciated: timeline, messages, revocation email, bank transfer summaries, screenshots, school contact update, Teresa notes, mortgage meeting notes, and proof of the unwanted visit. Marlene sat beside me. Across the table sat my father, my mother, Eliza, and Connor. My mother wore gray and looked wounded before anyone spoke. Eliza brought a notebook, which meant she intended to perform reasonableness. Connor wore a navy blazer and the expression of a man who had Googled enough legal terms to become dangerous to himself. My father would not look at me. Marlene opened the meeting by stating its purpose, to clarify that no enforceable financial commitment existed, no funds would be released, and further contact should respect boundaries I would provide in writing. Connor interrupted within 2 minutes. With respect, Ms. Hayes, Rachel presented these documents in a family setting with the obvious intention of inducing reliance. Marlene looked at him over her glasses. Mr. Grant, she presented and signed discussion copies and was then asked to leave before the discussion occurred. That is her version. Marlene slid a sheet across the table. It is also supported by the voicemail your wife left the next day referencing what happened before dessert, your mother-in-law's group message calling it a boundary, and your own text stating this was bigger than feelings after you had reviewed the torn drafts. Connor's mouth closed. I loved Marlene a little in that moment. My mother cried silently. Eliza reached for her hand. My father finally looked at me. Do you feel good about this? He asked. I thought carefully before answering. No, something like relief flickered across my mother's face, as if my pain meant a door had opened. I finished. But I feel clear. My father's jaw tightened. Your husband would be ashamed. Marlene's pen stopped moving. The room changed temperature. I turned to my father. For once, I did not feel small under his disapproval. I felt protective, not of myself, but of Daniel's name. Do not use him. My father leaned forward. Daniel believed in family. Daniel believed in safety, I said. He died because people ignored warnings and treated risk like paperwork. Do not sit there and tell me he would want me to ignore every warning in this room. Eliza scoffed. Now we're dangerous? To my peace? Yes. To Mia's? Absolutely. My mother whispered, we love Mia. I looked at her. You loved her so much you let her leave Christmas thinking her sadness ruined the room. My mother covered her mouth. Eliza said, that is not fair. Fair, I said, and the word almost made me laugh. Eliza, you have been funded, excused, defended, and centered your entire life. Do not talk to me about fair because the first time I stop paying for the imbalance, you call it abuse. Connor leaned back. This is clearly emotional. Marlene said, most family matters are. The question is whether anyone has a legal claim. You do not. He turned red. My father's hands were flat on the table. What do you want from us, Rachel? There it was, the question that should have come years earlier but had arrived only after money left the room. I opened my folder and took out one page. Not the full timeline. One page I had written the night before. I want no unscheduled visits. I want all communication in writing. I want no contact with Mia's school, doctor, or activities. I want Connor to stop referencing my settlement in any financial conversation. I want no public posts implying I am unstable, abusive, or exploiting Daniel's death. And I want you to understand that there will be no money. Eliza laughed once, sharp and ugly. So this is revenge. I looked at her for a long moment. No. Revenge would be giving you exactly what you taught me and calling it family. This is refusal. My mother folded forward, crying into her hands. My father did not comfort her. He was staring at the page. No money at all, he asked, and that question finally revealed the room. Not no relationship. Not no Mia. Not no Christmas. No money. I stood. The meeting is over for me. Marlene rose with me. Connor started to speak, but she lifted one hand. I would advise you to let her leave. In the hallway, I heard my mother say my name. I did not turn around. Outside, the February air was cruel and bright. I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes before I could drive, not because I regretted the meeting, but because seeing people clearly does not mean it does not hurt. Sometimes clarity is just grief with the lights on. The months after that meeting were not cinematic. That is the part people rarely understand about boundaries. There is no final speech that makes everyone respect you. There is paperwork, silence, relapse, guilt, another text from someone who did not listen the first time, another day when your child asks why grandma has not called and you have to decide how much truth a 7-year-old can carry. February became March. Eliza's boutique closed with a handwritten sign on the door about relocation that fooled nobody local because the landlord had changed the locks 2 days earlier. She blamed the economy publicly and me privately. Connor's new firm placed him on a shorter leash, according to Teresa, which in small financial circles is a polite way of saying people had started checking his claims twice. My parents listed their house in April. My mother sent me a photograph of the for sale sign with no message attached, as though an image alone could invoice my conscience. I did not respond. The house sold for less than they wanted because deferred maintenance always tells the truth at inspection. They moved into a rental duplex near the edge of town, and Aunt Gloria told everyone they had chosen to downsize. Amy told me my father sat through the whole closing without speaking and my mother cried in the car. I did not feel triumph. That surprised people when I said it, so mostly I stopped saying it. I did not want my parents homeless. I did not want Eliza's business to fail. I did not want Connor to be exactly who he was. I wanted a family that could have received help without turning my daughter into collateral. That family did not exist. Grieving imaginary people is strange because there is no funeral, only reminders. A grocery store aisle where my mother used to call and ask for just a little help. A Christmas ornament Mia made in preschool that still had grandma written in glitter because children love before they understand hierarchy. Daniel's birthday in April, when my father sent a text that said, he would want you to forgive. I deleted it. Forgiveness had become another word people used when they wanted the benefits of repair without the labor of accountability. I was not interested. What I was interested in was building a life that did not require constant defense. Marlene helped finalize the trust structures. The financial planner, a patient man named Owen, walked me through boring things that felt miraculous: tax planning, education funds, safe withdrawal rates, insurance coverage, beneficiary updates, a donor-advised fund in Daniel's name for construction safety training scholarships. I funded one scholarship at the community college for students going into site safety and inspection. I did not announce it on Facebook. I did not name it after myself. I named it the Daniel Mercer Worksite Safety Fund, and the first time the college sent me a thank you letter, I sat in my car and cried so hard I could not go inside the grocery store. That was money doing what money should have done all along, protecting life, not purchasing approval. Mia started therapy in February. She liked the therapist because the waiting room had a sand tray and because nobody there told her to speak louder. Slowly, details came out. She had noticed for years that Eliza's children got bigger gifts. She had noticed my mother hugged her differently. She had noticed adults got quiet when she talked about Daniel, not because they were sad with her but because they wanted her to stop. One night, while I brushed her hair before bed, she said, "I think Grandma wanted me to be happy so she didn't have to be sad." I paused with the brush in my hand. That was too accurate for 7, and also exactly 7, because children understand emotional labor long before they can spell it. "That wasn't your job," I said. "Is it yours?" she asked. I looked at us in the mirror, her small face, my tired one behind it, Daniel's eyes in both of us if I let myself see them. "No," I said. "I'm learning that, too." Spring came. We planted tomatoes in the backyard because Daniel always said store tomatoes tasted like wet cardboard. Mia named the first plant Captain Red. We painted the porch rail. I replaced the old couch with one that did not sag in the middle and felt guilty for 2 days before remembering furniture could be purchased without a family vote. On Saturdays, we drove to the park, then to the diner with the kind waitress, then home. Ordinary became the goal. I used to think peace would feel like happiness. It does not, at least not at first. It feels like the absence of being braced for impact. It feels like noticing birds. It feels like a child leaving half-finished drawings on the table because she trusts they will still be there when she comes back. In May, my mother wrote a letter. A real letter, 2 pages on stationery with pale blue flowers around the border. I knew her handwriting before I opened it and almost threw it away unread, but curiosity is one of the last hooks family leaves in you. The first page was memory. She wrote about bringing me home from the hospital, about how I used to follow Eliza around, about Christmas mornings when I was small, carefully selecting only memories that made her look tender and me look ungrateful for remembering anything else. The second page was accusation dressed as sorrow. She wrote that the house was gone, that my father had aged 10 years, that Eliza barely spoke to anyone, that Mia was being deprived of grandparents, that money had changed me. Near the end, she wrote, "When you are ready to apologize and restore what you broke, we will be here." I read that sentence 3 times. Restore what you broke. Not repair what we did. Not face what happened. Restore. Put the old system back. Return to the useful place. Bring the money with you. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the folder, not because I needed it legally, but because documentation had become a way of refusing the fog. Then I took Mia for ice cream. That night, after she went to bed, I sat on the back porch with Daniel's safety notebook open on my lap. The pages were worn soft at the edges from how often I had touched them. I thought about the last argument Daniel and I had before he died. Not a terrible argument, just a married one. My parents had needed money for a tax installment, and I had already sent half without telling him because I knew what he would say. He found out when balancing the account. He did not yell. Daniel almost never yelled. He got quiet, which was worse because his quiet was never manipulation, only disappointment trying to remain respectful. "Rachel," he said, "one day Mia is going to watch you disappear into their needs and think that's womanhood." I snapped back that he did not understand because his parents were normal. They were not perfect, but they were normal enough that no one had to earn dinner. He said, "You're right. I don't understand how they can keep taking from you and still make you feel like the one who owes." I slept turned away from him that night, angry because he had named the wound too cleanly. The next morning, he made coffee and kissed my shoulder and said, "I'm not mad at you. I'm scared for you." I had not thought about that sentence until after Christmas. Now it returned often. He had been scared not that my family would take money, but that they would take the part of me that knew I deserved better. In June, the community college invited Mia and me to the small scholarship reception. I almost declined because public rooms still made me nervous, but Mia wanted to wear her blue dress and see Daddy's safety kids, which made me laugh and cry at the same time. The recipient was a 20-year-old named Luis whose father had been injured on a roofing job. He shook my hand with both of his and said the scholarship meant he could reduce his hours at the warehouse and finish the certification program on time. His mother hugged me. I did not tell her that hugs from strangers had carried me through some of the worst days of my life. During the reception, I saw my father's truck drive slowly past the building. I know it was his because the left brake light still flickered, a repair he had postponed for years while criticizing everyone else's maintenance. He did not stop. He did not come in. For a moment, my stomach tightened the old way. Then Mia slipped her hand into mine and whispered, "Daddy would like this." The truck turned the corner and disappeared. "Yes," I said. "He would." That night, I received one text from my father. "Saw the scholarship thing. Good for you." 3 words that could have been pride if they had come from someone else. From him, they were a pebble tossed at a window he was too proud to approach. I did not answer. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because not every pebble deserves an open door. Sometimes no response is not cruelty. It is maintenance. By the time December came around again, Mia had grown 2 inches and lost the anxious habit of asking whether we were allowed to stay places. That was how I measured the year, not by bank statements or legal letters, but by how often my daughter forgot to be afraid. She laughed louder. She corrected adults who mispronounced her name. She invited a friend over and did not clean the living room first because she no longer thought love depended on presentation. We planned Christmas ourselves. Not as a defiant anti-family event, not as some glossy reinvention, just ours. Pancakes in the morning. A walk if it did not rain. A small tree with too many handmade ornaments. Patrice, my friend from work, and her son came for dinner because her family lived out of state and because chosen family does not always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it brings green bean casserole and complains about parking. On Christmas Eve, a package appeared on the porch with no return address. Inside was a porcelain angel ornament my mother had owned for years, the one she used to place at the top of the buffet and tell us not to touch. There was a note in her handwriting: Mia should have something from her real family. Real family. I held the ornament over the trash can for a long time. It was pretty. That was the problem with many things from my mother. Pretty enough to make you question whether sharp edges mattered. Mia came into the kitchen and saw it. "Is that from Grandma?" she asked. I said yes. She touched one porcelain wing with one finger. "Do we have to keep it?" "No," she thought about it. "Can we donate it? Maybe someone else will think it's nice and not know the weird part." I laughed then, a real laugh, sudden and almost shocking. "Yes, baby. We can donate the weird angel." So we did. On Christmas morning, Mia opened gifts in pajamas while Patrice's son built a tower out of wrapping paper tubes. No one compared presents. No one told anyone to sit still except when hot chocolate got too close to the edge of the table. No one used grief as a reason to exile a child. Before dinner, I took out one envelope. Not cream-colored, from Marlene's office. Plain white, with Mia's name on it. Inside was a printed page from her college fund statement, not with the full amount visible, just the account name and a note I had written: "This is one way, Daddy, and I keep showing up for your future." She read it slowly. "I have a future account?" "You do. Can I use it to be an artist and a veterinarian and maybe a person who studies frogs? We'll discuss the frog budget when the time comes." She folded the paper and put it in her keepsake box beside Daniel's photograph. Later, after everyone left and the house was quiet, I sat by the tree with a cup of tea and let myself remember the Christmas before. The torn envelopes. My mother barefoot on the porch. My father saying I did not get to walk away from family. Eliza's face when she saw a debt settlement. Connor's voice telling me not to make a financial mistake. For a long time, I thought that night was the moment I lost my family. But loss implies you had the thing in the form you needed. What I lost was the illusion that if I gave enough, paid enough, softened enough, explained enough, they would become the people Mia and I deserved. What I gained was less dramatic but far more useful. I gained the ability to leave a table where my child was being taught to shrink. I gained documents that told the truth when voices tried to bend it. I gained locks, passwords, boundaries, and a home that did not require performance. I gained the knowledge that generosity without discernment is not love, sometimes it is self-abandonment with a prettier name. My parents did not become villains in every story. I know that. Somewhere, my mother probably tells people grief and money changed me. My father probably says he does not recognize me anymore. Eliza certainly believes I ruined her when all I did was stop subsidizing the ruins she had built. Connor moved on to another brokerage, according to Teresa, and I hope every loan officer he meets asks for documents twice. As for me, I still miss Daniel every day. Money did not fix that. It did not tuck Mia in, did not shovel the driveway, did not laugh at bad cafeteria pizza reports, did not leave work boots by the garage door. But it did give me the power to build what he had always wanted for us, a life where safety was not negotiable and love did not arrive with invoices. The last time my father texted, months after that second Christmas, he wrote, "Was it really enough to save the house?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Yes." I did not send it. I deleted it and blocked the number. Because the answer no longer belonged to him. The money had been enough to save the house. But it had not been enough to make that house a home. And on the night they told my daughter and me to leave Christmas dinner, I finally understood the difference.